So let's touch on this TerrAscend listing. It becomes the first U.S. cannabis multi-state operator to list on the TSX. Big moment for the company, and I think really overall for the industry. So besides the obvious, Anthony, of listing on a tier one exchange, why is this listing so important for the industry when it comes to making progress? Hey, everyone. Welcome to our latest Trade to Black podcast. As usual, I'm your host, Shad Dales. Happy summer. Happy Independence Day for all of our American viewers. Happy Canada Day. I know it's a little bit almost a week later, but to our Canadian viewers as well and everybody around the world, big news this week. TerrAscend lists on the TSX. Can you believe it? Yes, it did happen as well. Larry Fink likes Bitcoin. What does this mean for Bitcoin moving forward? Let's find out. And welcome in the gents. Anthony Verrill, good to see you. Hope you had a good Independence Day down in Florida. How are things?
Yeah, it's good. It's good. It was nice and hot as per usual, and now it's kind of like a dead week. It's good to get back on camera, get in the office, and get some things going for once. This
Saw
week, at
one of
least.
your Instagram posts. You were biking at 7 a.m. It looked like it was on the A1A. What's the temperature in Fort Lauderdale at 7 a.m. this time of year?
Probably like 82, 83,
So she gets
around
toasty
there.
in a hurry.
Oh yeah. It's like I think right now it's a low of 80, high of 93.
Hmm.
Like this entire week we were golfing Monday, Tuesday, and it was in the 90s come 11, 12 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ben, good to see you this week. We were downtown at the TSX with TerrAscend. Fun day, don't you think?
Yeah, it was great. Great hanging out with the TerrAscend crew, and good to see the listing. And speaking of toasty, it's pretty hot over here too. It feels like 100. It's going to feel like 100 all week.
Toasty.
So I feel like Florida's come up here.
That was a good 44 ounce bone-in ribeye that we got at the old Blue Blood Steakhouse. Give a shout out to the steakhouse in Toronto with the TerrAscend team earlier this week. But wow, it's a great steakhouse, isn't it?
It's a great venue too. I hadn't been to that place for a long time. Casaloma in Toronto. It's a landmark there. I haven't been there for a long time, but quite impressive. Quite impressive venue.
Thought I was having steak at Bruce Wayne's house. That's what it was like. Anyway, let's get into it. All views of the Trade to Black podcast. The guests on this podcast are purely opinion. You should not treat any opinions expressed by us or our guests as investment advice. And the views on this podcast are solely intended to be informational and are not investment advice. Okay, so let's touch on this TerrAscend listing. It becomes the first U.S. cannabis multi-state operator to list on the TSX. Big moment for the company, and I think really overall for the industry. So besides the obvious, Anthony, of listing on a tier one exchange, why is this listing so important for the industry when it comes to making progress?
Yeah, I mean, I think it signals compliancy of the business. I think it telegraphs that it's a clean business. It's able to get past regulators and get on that major exchange, which no other U.S. cannabis company has achieved as of right now. And I think that bodes well for telegraphing uplisting to a major U.S. exchange
Yeah.
down the road, whether it's NYSE or NASDAQ. I mean, these companies need to get off these junior exchanges. They need to get on the major exchanges. I mean, just liquidity in this
Mhm.
sector is crazy. I mean, we saw Cybin yesterday traded, I think, 7 million shares. That might have out traded the entire cannabis sector when you look at it. I mean, it's long overdue. Jason's been pushing this for months and a little, maybe even over a year now. And it's good to see it. Good to see it finally come to fruition. Rooting for them on the TSX. Rooting to see an uplisting here in the next 6 to 9 months, probably in the U.S. And I'm sure Jason will be ahead of the curve as far as the regulatory front goes moving forward.
It's an interesting point you made, Anthony, and that's something that he talked about with us, Ben, is that next stop is the NASDAQ, potentially
Yeah.
in the US. No, we're not going to indicate any timelines, but with this listing on the TSX, Ben, that only obviously helps chances of them uplisting onto a major exchange, which could be a game changer with the overall industry.
Yeah, it does because the tier one the TSX is a tier one exchange, and that's so they have higher standards of listing and compliance and disclosure than the venture or the OTC down in the States. So it will make it easier for them to uplist to NASDAQ or NYSE in due course when they're able to, and I think that's one of the benefits here. That although we may not be seeing the immediate effects of it. They're going to be the first to be able to do that, and they'll probably have a head start over anybody in terms of uplisting, in terms of receiving funds from capital from small cap funds on the TSX, index funds and stuff like that. And now they're
Yeah.
eligible for that. So there's a few benefits. It may not, again, it may not be apparent right away, but there are benefits to listing. And we congratulate TerrAscend for making it there.
Yeah, here's an interesting thing. Like in the past, whenever we've had any kind of positive news in the US, what stocks have moved the most is Canopy and Tilray because they're on the NASDAQ, New York Stock Exchange.
Yeah.
So when we start to see a turn in this industry, does TerrAscend start to fall into that narrative too? Now that they're on to tier one, that stocks like that have more access to like, institutional money will reap the benefits, especially here in the short term as it's a standalone on the TSX?
I want to play devil's advocate here. I don't think so. I think Canopy and Tilray truly had a first mover advantage in the space, most notably thanks to Bruce Linton. Tilray, privateer backing them. Peter Thiel was associated with it. I mean, they were the pinnacle or the starting point for the sector. Obviously, they've fallen from grace. I would argue that TerrAscend is more fundamentally sound than probably both of those companies right now, especially if you look at the markets they're operating on in the US. But I don't think that just because they graduated to the tier one exchange is going to allow them to trade as a proxy for the sector. That being said, I think this is going to increase their visibility. And I think once they actually create the narrative and streamline their comms efforts, I mean, people are going to understand that TerrAscend is a very lucrative business in the United States. They're levered to a lot of keystone markets in the United States. And it's a stock that definitely warrants investment in the future. But I don't think you're going to see the same action that you're seeing as a trading as a proxy with what we've seen with Canopy and Tilray.
Hmm.
Yeah, I
All
think it
righty.
depends. I think it depends whether that ticker does show up on U.S. brokerage accounts. We put up a tweet earlier this week that in 2021 in November, Reuters reported that J.P. Morgan was discontinuing listings of U.S. cannabis operators that were not listed on NASDAQ, NYSE,
Yeah.
or the Toronto Stock Exchange. So there's some ambiguity of whether now with the TSX listing, TerrAscend will actually show up on portfolio eligibility on portfolios for some of these U.S. brokerages. I don't know the answer to that yet, but it is a possibility. If they do show up there, then we could see some inflows in there for the U.S. cannabis trade. But then there's a U.S. dollar, Canadian dollar conversion, and such issues like that. So it depends. But if they show up on more portfolio watches and the ticker is eligible to be bought and sold, then it could happen.
Yeah. Overall, a little surreal seeing a U.S. multi-state operator list on the TSX, and these conversations actually didn't happen as recent as 6 months ago. These actually started back in 2018. So
Yeah.
kudos to the company for holding their cards closely and keeping this quiet. It started to obviously create some attention as little as 6 months ago, but why wouldn't it? And they walk the walk and talk the talk and walk the walk. They made it happen. And I think it's obviously a monumental moment, which Jason was extremely happy with earlier this week. Want to touch on another U.S. multi-state operator made news this week. It involves the European footprint of Curaleaf, who announced the acquisition of Cleverleaf Portugal. Can you guys dive into the significance of this announcement?
Yeah, it's an EU GMP processing facility. It's going to be a complementary asset to their current vertically integrated operation in the EU via the EMAC acquisition, and I think it strengthens Curaleaf's position in the EU. Boris has alluded to that they're going to get very aggressive in the EU. I'm an investor in Curaleaf. I own shares in Curaleaf. This is not financial advice. This is not financial advice related to Curaleaf, but I think Curaleaf is one of the strongest operators in the US. They're going to be a global player in the space, and they've already taken the steps forward to be a global player in the
Mm-hmm.
space. I do think that you're probably going to see the likes of GTI, maybe TrueLeaf, maybe someone like a Verano step into the international landscape sooner or later. But as of right now, Curaleaf has that pole position. I think this is it's a great asset. It's an EU GMP already licensed facility. And it just strengthens their footprint in the region.
What would you say then is with this acquisition as far as streamlining EU GMP flower production?
It's just greater. It's just fortifying their processing. It's allowing them to service the EU at greater scale. It's just going to create efficiencies in their supply chain. It's a
Hmm.
great complementary asset that I'm assuming Clever Leaves either weren't activating or they needed to spin it off and they wanted to get out of the EU. And it's probably a nice. There's synergies there with the EMAC assets.
They're
Yeah, I
going
don't
full
have.
in.
The market
Go
seems
ahead.
to like it. They're up. They're holding steady on a pretty solid market down day, and it was up about 8%. Yeah, yesterday as well. So the market seems to like this news. I have nothing really to add. I think Anthony covered it most, but it's good to have that EU GMP status because that's what's going to be required to get the flower into the market in Germany.
One thing's
Yeah,
for sure, Boris and the boys are all in on that European market, aren't they?
you have to be.
Yeah,
I mean, you have to be. It's a hedge you get. I don't even want to call it a hedge on the US, but it's just broadening out your footprint. I mean, cannabis operators, I mean, I don't think you see particularly like spirits and tobacco for the most part a global enterprise. I mean, AB InBev is operating globally, but I mean, you don't see a lot of overlap within the EU and Europe. But I mean, from an investment perspective, there's nothing more that I'd like to see than a strong US operator doubling down abroad and going after those markets when they're in their infancy as well. It's also going to create efficiencies in a two-way street because if the EU get their regulatory shit together quicker than the US,
I know.
Curaleaf is going to gain expertise operating in that environment and being able to deploy that expertise in the US once we get things moving here. So, I mean, I love it. I'm all for Boris
I don't think it's a
going all in on
question.
Europe.
It's just a matter of when, because they will get their shit
Yeah.
together. And Germany's
Yep.
obviously, as we've just discussed in the past, is the first stop. Let's now talk about this company, just nothing short of headlines all the time. Canopy Growth. Ben, we'll start with you. What are your thoughts on 8 Capital analyst Ty Collins' note regarding Canopy Growth and their $0 price target of the company? What'd you make of that?
Yeah, I read the note, and I think that the biggest thing that investors should be concerned about is when he said, and I'm paraphrasing that he doesn't think Canopy Growth should be valued as a going concern. And if you're an investor, that's like the last thing you want to hear, right? That's in
You
the
think?
disclosures and the filings, all the disclosures, going concern, because that raises serious doubts of whether this company is going to make it long term. Like we're talking 18 months from now, right? Like he sees serious troubles in the water, and that completely deflated all the big gains that it had undergone. And on July 3rd, it reversed about 22%. It's down again
Yeah.
today. It's yeah, no investor wants to hear that. And I don't even think that it was the first zero price target. I think another brokerage house came with that as well. But the going concern is a big no, and that's going to give everybody pause, unfortunately. And I don't know what to make of it. It's a net debtor company now, so their liabilities exceed potentially their assets, and that's never a good position to be in.
I don't get it. I mean, I'm stumped. I'm eating my words. I will eat whatever pound of shit any of the listeners want to come at me with in the comments, as I've been bullish on Canopy, and I thought that they had staying power. I don't know what to think. What's going on? I have to think that there's some greater plan
Yeah.
that Constellation has in place that we just can't see. I don't know enough about the financial engineering as far as the debt or credit facilities that are on the books and what would happen if they just defaulted and wiped out the equity holders. Would they be better off in the long run? Um, I won't touch it with a 10-foot pole right now, even though I think the risk reward is maybe still there. But I just don't know. I would hate to see Canopy fall. But yeah, I mean,
18.
I'm with Ben and I'm with the analyst. I mean, as far as I'm concerned right now, it is absolutely uninvestable.
See, unfortunately, I think the main concern here is that they're losing so much money and they're
Yeah.
so far away from any sort of,
And 18 months is not a
adjusted
long
EBITDA
time.
gain.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but I
that
don't
there's
care who you
no.
are. $5
Sorry.
billion for Constellation is a lot of money to lose. Like,
That's
granted, they've been writing things down and writing things down and writing things down. And I'm sure the blow's not going to be like if they just lit it on fire. But I mean, that's a big fuck up, to be blunt.
Well,
you think?
it's already gone though, right? Like,
Yeah, yeah.
the equity is almost already
5
gone anyway.
billion.
So writing it down, the whole thing now won't,
Their
it's
market caps, as we're speaking, their market cap's 252 million USD,
the
which
damage
is
is done.
laughable.
The damage is done.
Yeah.
But how can they even raise money anymore at this stage? And I think that's the main problem. Like, raising money going forward. That last $100 million convertible might have been like their last best opportunity. And if they lose the rest of their $600 million remain on their balance sheet, what are they going to do? And I think that's the main
They're
concern. I think that's what Ty Collins was alluding to. It's like when you run out of options,
Yeah.
unfortunately,
it's
that
pretty
they might
wild.
be near the end of the road in terms of being able to raise capital at any sort of reasonable valuation.
So if they
Irwin
fold,
Simon, Irwin
what's
Simon just comes in from the top rope, scoops them up.
yeah, who knows? As far as a fallen from grace type story, what's worse, Tiger Woods or Canopy Growth if they fold? Like, this is crazy.
Oh wait, Tiger came back and won the Masters.
Minus the
So
comeback. Minus the comeback.
I
What?
mean, granted, I'm not going to lie. There are people on Twitter that I could probably go through right now that called this a very long time ago.
Yeah.
There are people that are on the right side of history right now when it comes to Canopy. I'm not one of them. Ben's probably not one of them either. I didn't see this coming, but yes, I mean, this is an all-time.
5 billion, baby.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is a big one. This is a big, or you know what, Kronos maybe lends them a couple of dollars in some sort of facility or takeover. But
Yeah.
yeah, I don't see how they survive.
The worst part about this, I'm going to say Tiger Woods, because at least with Tiger Woods, a lot of it was self-inflicted, right? Like, partying in, Las Vegas, and, crashing his car due
Can't
to
believe we're talking about this.
barbiturates.
I
Yeah.
love Tiger Woods. I can't say a bad thing about Tiger Woods. Tiger Woods is like a god for me.
Yeah, no, I
Yeah.
love Tiger Woods, but that was self-inflicted. The problem with Canopy Growth is it's nothing of like not nothing. They bought a lot of bad assets that didn't turn out, granted, but a lot of this is not self-inflicted. It's like we had a terrible regulatory environment in Canada for like a good 2 years when it started, right? Which there was not enough retail shops in Ontario, the most populous country, and all. The U.S. cannabis, the regulatory reform, it's been very slow to act, so they couldn't get in the United States. So a lot of this, Germany didn't open up, internationally didn't open up, so they've had a lot of things go against it.
Yeah.
Obviously, a lot of assets
Fair
again
point.
were not great, and they probably built up too fast and unnecessarily in a lot of ways. But a lot of it's not self-inflicted. So I feel bad for shareholders here because the concept was good. It just everything sort of went against them from a regulatory standpoint.
Yeah.
If you're still holding Canopy, though, you deserve what's coming to you. I mean, the writing's been on the wall for a while now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
86 million shares traded earlier this week in one day. Biggest volume ever. Let's focus now on switch to psychedelics. Another week closer to MAPS' announcement of their phase 3 MDMA readouts. A lot of people highly anticipating that announcement. As far as stocks are concerned within the industry, Cybin seen its stock climb 100% over 3 weeks. However, we're starting to see some sell-off. But Ben, maybe we'll start with you. How do you explain the recent surge of Cybin?
Well, I explain it the same way that we see Canopy Growth in the past. And Tilray get a huge jump on any sort of U.S. regulatory reform hope, right? It trades on a tier one listing because the
You're
actual
right.
news flow probably doesn't warrant it. At least in the short term, it's up about over 100%. Trough to peak over the past few weeks, and now we're seeing the inevitable sell-off, which profit takers are coming in and all that. So I think a lot of it is really just the exchange, right? Granted, Cybin does have some good readouts coming in the second half of this year. We're now in the second half, so investors can look forward to that. But I think it just really what it comes down to a story about being listed on the exchange, having access to capital. We saw all the good media coverage come post
I
the
know.
MAPS conference, and it's still coming, which it really, really bodes well for the sector. I can't underestimate that enough
Yeah.
because this is really good. A lot of good coverage. Everybody's on board, and they're the beneficiary of that. So, and yeah, that I think I attribute most of it to that.
Do you guys think if the readouts are, a lot of people are thinking they're going to be very positive, but do you think MDMA will be descheduled by the DEA at some point later this year? I'm not saying FDA approving, I'm talking about descheduling MDMA.
I'd love
I
it to
think
be.
so. Oh, go ahead,
I
Anthony.
think it's. I think it could be. I mean, not to be, I guess, alliterative, but I mean, this sector kind of gives me PTSD to a degree. So
Why
does
is that?
cannabis. Because we've just seen so many ups and downs, and we're waiting on big news, and then it's sell off. It's sell the news events. It's not take the next leg higher. But I don't think that there's ever been more momentum in this space than there is right now. Real momentum, not capital markets momentum and euphoria of just deals coming out, going parabolic, and people trading the sector. We're turning the bait. We're rounding third coming home.
Yeah.
As far as getting real substantial data and catalysts for this space.
I was speaking this week
Yeah.
to Matthew Buckley that we interviewed in Denver. And when he was in Washington, just the government officials that they're speaking with and how they're basically saying, in a lot of cases with veterans, 0% PTSD after they're taking MDMA with some of the therapy that's approving. Like this isn't, 10, 20, 30% regression in PTSD. This is
No.
0%, which is blowing their minds. And that's why data wise, they're a lot further ahead than where cannabis is. And a lot of people speaking that we could see descheduling happen. And when that happens, wow, this is really going to take off as far as this industry when it comes to attention, don't you think, Ben?
Yeah, I do, and I don't see how the FDA would not do it, especially if the data and the safety data from the new readout coming from MAPS is positive, right? Because the safety, it's a well studied drug, and I think the safety has been clearly established over time,
Yeah,
and if it's put down on paper in a clinical trial environment. No safety issues so far in the first two readouts. We'll see what the final report looks like, but I don't see how they could not go along with that. And
yeah,
same thing with most of the psychedelic drugs. And just to Anthony's point about rounding third base, Compass is also coming out with psilocybin in their assisted therapy trial, and that data is due out in mid-year of 2024. So that's really not that far away either. We're talking like a year, maybe a little bit more, because things get tend to get delayed a little bit, but it's not that far off, right? So you have MDNA coming down the pipe, MAPS is coming out with data
I know.
soon, new drug application in Q4, and then a few months later, then psilocybin's turn with Compass, right? So it's incredible what's going on right now, and if you can tolerate the risk, some people might find these prices attractive.
Yeah, I mean, for me, there's enough firsthand accounts of people that have PTSD, of people that have TRD, that psychedelics have worked for. And I mean, I've seen those diseases in front and center. Like they are debilitating diseases that you don't just turn off. You can't turn them off. So I mean, if there is efficacy, and we've seen it with people that we know, me, you, Shad, Ben, like we've seen what this stuff can do. Um, I believe that these readouts and these clinicals are going to come back positive, and like we're at a turning point. If you do believe that, then I mean, this is absolutely the time to
Yeah.
start looking at the sector very closely and with confidence, because it is
Yeah.
going to change lives, unlike cannabis, which, as much as everybody says it's medicinal, it is whatever. I think cannabis is recreational.
It's recreational
And
play.
cannabis is absolutely recreational in the eyes of the law, in the eyes of the lawmakers. Psychedelics are not. I think
You're right.
psychedelics are a paradigm shifting movement, that's going to change a lot of lives for the better.
Many people saying this is as big as the internet. Like it's like I can't help but feel that. Look at some of the people that have already written checks recently, including Steve Cohen, who you actually have a personal relationship with too, Anthony. But his news last week with the $5 million check that he donated to Maps. Tom's founder writing a check for $100 million. But if these readouts are as strong as many people are hoping and anticipating to be, I see a lot of big philanthropists across the world to start getting involved and believing in this more and more. But one other thing I wanted to bring up, HC Wainwright, $120 price target for Compass Pathways, Ben.
Yeah, I don't know what
120.
to say. I mean, biotech price targets are always a little dicey. I don't put too much stock into them because they assume that everything is going to go through with the FDA. They assume the best case scenario, and of course, it may not turn out. It may or may not turn out that way. But I mean, it's crazy. It's absolutely some of these price targets in the sector. Like it's like they're not even in the same ballpark, not even on the same planet. Like for example, I think there's a $5 current price target on small pharma. It's trading at 7 cents.
What?
MindMed, there's a $75 price target. I believe from Wainwright. Don't quote me on that. It is trading at $3.50.
It is
Like the price
75.
target disparity
Small
between it's
small farmers at
crazy.
7 cents with a
Let me let
$5
me
price
let
target.
me bring this up then,
Yeah,
because there's been a
I
few
believe it's
people that
5.
have commented on some of these, some of our latest podcasts. If you could share with the audience right now, like what's, and again, not investment advice, but what's the message that you take from seeing these price targets? Like you said, a prime example, small pharma, 7 cents and a price target of 5. When I read somebody saying that MyMed has a price target of $75, I had to rub my eyes and look twice and thought it was, is this real? You know what I mean?
Yeah, of course.
So I there's the only reason that I would legitimize these price targets is if you really want to look back, we've already lived through this
Yeah.
with GW Pharma, with Epidiolex. With Epidiolex, when Jazz Pharma came in, they bought GW for I think $6.8 billion. These price
That
targets put these psychedelics companies in the neighborhood of around 4 to 5 billion. And I would argue that the addressable market with these substances and these therapies
much
is
bigger.
far, far bigger than
$820
what,
billion dollars the US government spends in substance use
yeah,
disorder that we learned,
that,
right? So
yeah, than what Epidiolex is servicing. So, I mean, small pharma, yeah, that's 100x where they're at right now. That's if not more. No, it is. It's 100x. They're at 5 cents right now. It's 100x from where they are right now.
wow.
Um,
Is
currently.
that, is that all?
So, I mean, yeah. So, I mean, the risk reward is obviously there. But yeah, anybody that's looking into these blown out spreads between the current share price and these targets, I implore you to go look at to go look at history and look what happened with GW Pharma, with Epidiolex, and when they when they got taken out.
Interesting. Interesting.
So the value creation is there. It's just a matter of them getting over the finish line, which
So
is
you
Again,
a
though,
very very
worth noting to all our audience out there that this, these price assumptions usually, they include the best case scenario that the drug gets
yeah, yeah.
approved, regulatory environment is perfect, descheduling on everything, a total addressable market that is at its optimal. Which sometimes doesn't turn out to be that case. Sometimes the market is smaller, so keep that in mind. When looking at these price targets and
Yeah,
research.
good point. Let's jump into crypto. No shortage of announcements in this industry, including BlackRock CEO Larry Fink, who recently backing Bitcoin, referring it to as digital gold, a complete 180 from a stance back in 2017, Anthony. So why the change and the implication of it all?
He wants in.
He wants
He wants
in.
in. He wants the BlackRock ETF approved. I mean, this is. I don't want to say it's a lot of theater because I'm all for what they're all saying, but I mean, I've thought this for a very long time. When you look at Jamie Dimon, when you look at David Solomon, when you look at all the heads of the banks, the large money center and bulge bracket iBanks, like they've all been anti crypto
I know.
publicly,
Now they want
but
in.
they've all had trading desks, they've all had research into it, and they've all been looking at it for a very long time. um, I don't think it's coincidence that all of these institutional players file Bitcoin ETF applications as well as get vocal about cryptocurrency in conjunction with the SEC going after Coinbase and Binance. It's somewhat orchestrated to a degree, but if you actually looked at what Fink was saying yesterday, I'm firmly of the belief that he was using Bitcoin as a proxy statement because he didn't want to say crypto because of the uncertainty around crypto, that being Ethereum, Matic, Chainlink, the traditional altcoins, as well as L1s, as they
Interesting.
can be, you can define them as a security if you really wanted to, as far as everything goes. Bitcoin, you cannot. Bitcoin is a store of value. Bitcoin is digital gold. However, for Larry Fink to sit up there and say that Bitcoin is going to revolutionize finance, I don't buy it because Bitcoin, from a transactions per second perspective, can't do what Swift does. It can't even do what Ethereum does right now, and it's very expensive to transact in size. But it is a digital gold. If you look at what BlackRock does, BlackRock are in the asset management business. BlackRock need to position their clients to preserve wealth. I think, like I've said on this show for probably the past couple of years, that Bitcoin is going to be part of a portfolio.
Yep.
Ethereum is going to be part of a
Yep.
portfolio. And whether that is a 1, 2, or 3% allocation via some sort of structured financial product that's coming out of Fidelity, Invesco, BlackRock, it doesn't matter to me because the number is going to go up regardless with Bitcoin and Ethereum. If you have sovereign wealth funds, if you have pension funds, if you have BlackRock, that's the largest asset manager on earth that wants a piece, and it doesn't need to be a large piece, it can be a small piece, the market's going to go up. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, like these guys were always coming to the party. This is not
It's just a
something
matter
to
of time.
be, yeah, this is not something to be negative about. This is not something to be like, oh, like get off my lawn. Like this isn't like where you need to play. We need them to come play
Yeah.
because Larry Fink carries weight in Washington.
Yep. Of course.
Larry Fink carries weight everywhere that he goes. So does Invesco. So does Fidelity. So do all those big boys that are sitting on Wall Street. They're not going to sour it. They're going to add value to the equation.
Mhm.
I welcome everything that Larry said. I don't agree with a lot of what Larry says when it comes to ESG, when it comes to diversity, inclusion, and equity. I think some of the things that he said are flawed. I think some of the ideologies that BlackRock invests behind are flawed. But if they want to come into Bitcoin, I welcome it. It's just there's also in the back of everybody's mind that all these institutional players, can they gather enough Bitcoin to where they can start to control the network? Can they gather enough
Is there
Bitcoin, or
truth
can
to
they
that?
gather? There is, but it'd be very difficult. It'd be very, very difficult. They would have it. It's almost impossible.
What would you
Um,
say are your thoughts on the recent public, dog and pony show surrounding Bitcoin?
What do you mean in regards to like the government, or in regards to like the institutional sentiment?
Really everything. The old brass, no, now the old brass wants to jump in. Like it's just there's no shortage of drama, but at the end of the day, one thing that stays consistent is the overall interest that's gaining attention from investors everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you look at the fiat experiment that is the US dollar, I mean, someone as smart as Larry Fink, he understands the market dynamics that are at play with the dollar. He understands where it is. He probably understands where it's going, and the future doesn't look too bright, all things considered, with the debt based system that we've deployed in globally. Um, if I'm a money manager, or if I'm an asset manager, or if I'm a very wealthy, high net worth individual, you want assets that are not correlated to the dollar directly.
Yep.
Bitcoin is that. Bitcoin's immutable. Bitcoin is sitting on an island by itself. There's not any more getting created. It is the digital equivalent of gold. Gold is a pain in the ass. I invest in physical gold. The only reason I do is it a hedge against any of my digital exposure, even in the
Mhm.
fiat and in the crypto realm. Bitcoin's easy to park money in. It's also very easy to transfer. I could send you $10 million in Bitcoin right now.
Yeah.
No questions asked, and it'd be there in probably 2 minutes. He understands that. These guys all understand it. It was just a function of not if, when they decided to change sentiments on crypto. And that time is now.
What do you make of the Bitcoin halving that's coming, I think, up next year? Is that going to change the dynamics? And what does that do? Does that change the structure in terms of the float? Does that mean that there's double the amount of Bitcoins, or how does that having
It can create a supply shock um, to restricting supply, not increasing supply. So I mean, it's the market's setting up here for Bitcoin to take a ride.
Yeah.
I don't want to sit here and say that we're going to be seeing $100,000 Bitcoin anytime soon, or $1 million Bitcoin like Kathy Wood was saying. But I mean, I've read studies and I've read papers that if sovereign wealth funds and these mega asset managers come in and they allocate 1.5% to their clients' portfolios, or 1.5% of their assets to Bitcoin and Ethereum, I mean, the markets are going to like 20 to 30x
Yeah.
from where they're at right now.
Yeah.
The halvening just compounds the effects of them coming in before that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it could get pretty exciting.
all while reducing volatility, right? Because that's sort
Yep.
of
Yeah.
the paradox of volatility. When you get the most volatile asset and put it against less volatile assets, you actually reduce your volatility in the portfolio. So I would
Correct.
imagine that this would be attractive to, clients of BlackRock, right? These big, huge accounts, right?
Can you imagine the early
Larry,
stage Bitcoin investor? when that day comes, just sitting on top of a mountain
I
with
mean,
a cigar saying, "Told you, you fuckers."
to be completely honest, most of those guys are out of the market. They got out at like 60K.
Yeah.
I hope most of them did. I know a lot of them that did. They were buying back in the 18s when we scaled down. But yeah, I mean, Larry Fink isn't just roguely acting. Larry Fink has definitely been hearing from his clients that they want exposure to Bitcoin and understands that it absolutely is not going anywhere. And I think that China, Russia, Dubai, all of those jurisdictions loosening their stances on crypto gave way for him and the institutional players in this country to be like, all right, these guys are doing it. If we don't speak up now, the government is going to completely fuck this. And then we're not going to have a bite at the apple. And they always get a bite at the apple,
Yeah.
sitting where they're sitting.
Good podcast, gents. This has been great. We'll check in with you guys later this week. Before I let you go, Threads, new social app launched. What'd you guys think of it? Obviously, early days, and there's some improvements that need to be made. But do you think this rivals Twitter?
I'm not going to fade Zuckerberg. Zuckerberg's a genius when it comes to product. Just look at what he's built with Facebook, with WhatsApp, with Instagram. The app is cool. However, I would consider myself like a Twitter power user, and going into a feed and going into a Twitter style app
Yeah.
where there's no hashtags, no DMs, no GIF comments. There's a lot to be added
Yes.
to the user interface, which I'm assuming it will, because Zuck's probably got the best engineering talent on the planet when it comes to these apps. But I mean, I think what also a lot of people need to realize is I think that Zuckerberg realizes that Elon bought Twitter as a fire hose to feed his large language model data. And I think that's exactly why Zuckerberg just threw up Threads to start creating that fire hose of user data to start to feed an LLM on the meta side.
One thing's for sure, this ongoing feud between those two is not going away anytime soon. Is
No,
this boxing match indeed going to happen?
it would be a UFC match. It wouldn't be a boxing match.
Oh, it's a UFC match?
It'd be a UFC match, and I think Zuckerberg would kick his ass. Zuckerberg got first place in a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu tournament.
Oh, he did.
Zuckerberg can fight.
No, I
You don't
did
want to
not
fuck
know.
around with you don't want to fuck around with anyone that's like highly skilled in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And for Zuck to go into a tournament and
Shaking his
win,
head.
I think he would beat Elon's ass. But at the same time, like, I don't see them as formidable adversaries. Like, Elon's got Tesla and SpaceX.
Yeah,
As far as I'm concerned, those are two of the most transformational companies on the planet.
I agree.
Yes, what Zuckerberg did transform the way we live and we connect, but no one's touching Elon as far as I'm concerned.
Ben, who you got your money on in that match?
Well, I was kind of shaking my head there because Anthony's talking about it like it's a serious proposition. When I see these
It
kind of
is.
things, I just scroll back. To me, this is very gimmicky. It's gimmicky stuff. I don't have time for this kind of stuff. That's just my personality. Yeah, I'm not paying any attention to this, giving it any
Yeah.
sort of. Yeah, I'm just not interested at all.
Well, he just put the water out on the fire there, didn't he, buddy?
I mean, I'm not exactly researching it. I'm just looking at it. Comes up in my Twitter feed, so I absorbed by what's on the timeline.
Of an interesting note, though, about about the new social media thing that Meta launched, they're having problems from out of the gate. I was reading this morning that if you tried to delete something in a thread, then you had to delete your account, and on Instagram or something like that.
Really?
Maybe I mangled that up, but there's some bugs going on right there. So out of the gate, it's not so smooth. I'm sure they'll iron those out, but
Yeah.
it's pretty big bugs.
We got to get some hair product sponsors. Look at that hair on Varel. Look at that fro. Just beautiful.
Pretty impressive. Pretty
It's
impressive.
natural. It literally dries like this.
No hairspray,
I'm
buddy?
jealous, brother. I'm jealous.
No,
Mine's-
there's no product, no nothing. This literally just dries like this.
I got to head to Turkey soon. This is getting thinner and thinner by the day. Anyways,
shave it off. That's it. No maintenance
I tried
issues.
that 5 years ago. I just couldn't.
Yeah, Ben,
couldn't
you've
do
got
it.
a fucking full head of hair.
Yeah, that's the difference.
You just choose to. Your hairline doesn't look like it's moved a follicle.
I know, right?
It hasn't. The reason why I don't is I end up looking like a chia pet if I try to grow it out. So to me it's easier just to go this way, this route.
Looking good, gents. Summer months. Enjoy this time of year. We've been waiting for it all year long. So anyway, appreciate the feedback, and let's touch base later this week.
Awesome. Talk soon.
All right.
Take care.
See you guys.
Hey, everyone. So what'd you think of the interview? Did you like what we asked? Is there any information you want to learn more of? Then leave a comment below and let us know what you think. As usual, share this video with your network, smash that like button, and most importantly, make sure to subscribe to our channel because we would not be here without you. Thanks for watching, everyone.